Now, over the years since the creation of the Pokemon franchise, there have been many Pokemon created. However, only a few of them became popular as well as being recognizable by non-Pokemon fans. For example, Pikachu is recognizable by non-Pokemon fans, as well as the Pokemon known as Charizard. However, out of all the Pokemon that are the most iconic, the one that's the most powerful and iconic is Mewtwo. Now, for those of you who don't know, Mewtwo is a legendary psychic Pokemon that was introduced in Red, Blue, Yellow, and Green, and it can be found in Cerulean Cave after beating the Elite Four and the Champion. Or if you play Fire Red and Leaf Green, you have to complete a mission in the Seve Islands involving defeating the remnants of Team Rocket, as well as restoring the Pokemon Network Center, which can allow you to trade with Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Now, over the years, Mewtwo has become one of the most popular and most well-known Pokemon in the franchise, and this is mainly due to its appearance in the Pokemon movie known as Mewtwo Strikes Back, where it was the main villain. It's also one of the only few Pokemon that can actually talk to humans, along with the Pokemon known as Meowth. In fact, Mewtwo is so popular it wound up making an appearance in Super Smash Bros. Melee as an unlockable fighter. Now, Mew has a pretty simple backstory. It was created in a lab on Cinnabar Island by a group of scientists, by experimenting with the DNA of a Pokemon known as Mew, and as a result they wound up creating Mewtwo. However, thanks to the experiments, Mewtwo wound up becoming vicious, and as a result, it wound up destroying the Pokemon Mansion and ran away to Cerulean Cave, where it waits for a strong trainer to challenge it. Now, I can't be talking about Mewtwo without discussing the Pokemon known as Mew. Now, for those of you who don't know, Mew is a mythical legendary psychic Pokemon. And unlike Mewtwo, Mew cannot be caught through normal means, because whereas Mewtwo can be found in Cerulean Cave after you beat the Elite Four, Mew can only be caught through the use of a glitch in Red, Blue, and Yellow. Now, in Pokemon Emerald, Mew can actually be obtained on Faraway Island through the use of an item called the Old Sea Map, which is an event item that was only released in Japan, meaning international players couldn't reach Faraway Island without the use of cheating. Now, judging from Mew's design, it looks like it could be based on a cat. After all, it does have cat-like features, mainly the ears and the tail. However, if you look closely, Mew is actually based on an embryo, which makes sense because Mew has the DNA of every single Pokemon in existence, even future Pokemon that will appear in any future game. Now, no one really knows who created Mewtwo in the first place, or who obtained Mew's DNA for the cloning process in the first place. However, there are some hints thanks to the games as well as the anime. Now, the movie pretty much shows Mewtwo blowing up the island, and unlike the games, Mewtwo wasn't created on Cinnabar Island. It was actually created on a different island called New Island. And after blowing up the island, Mew was actually greeted by a man who just arrived there to check on its creation. That man being Giovanni, who, for those of you who don't know, is the leader of an organization called Team Rocket. And it turns out that Giovanni was actually the one who funded the project for cloning Mewtwo in the first place. Now, in the games, it's pretty much implied that the person who created Mewtwo is actually Mr. Fuji, aka Dr. Fuji. Yes, the same Mr. Fuji who's a kind old man in Lavender Town who takes care of orphan Pokemon. And perhaps after feeling guilty for creating Mewtwo, he decided to go to Lavender Town to take care of orphan Pokemon in order to atone for his own past mistakes. Now, I know what you're all thinking. How did Mr. Fuji get a DNA sample of Mew? Well, the answer is he may have sailed to Faraway Island, possibly with the help of Mr. Bryony, in order to obtain Mew's DNA. Which makes sense because according to the sign in Faraway Island, Mew will actually appear to a kind-hearted person. And in the Japanese version of the game, at the end of the message, there's actually a remnant of a signature, and the signature is G, possibly indicating that Mr. Fuji may have left this message after he obtained Mew's DNA sample. Now, in the Pokemon movie, Mr. Fuji actually makes an appearance as a scientist. Now, the one difference between the movie version of Mr. Fuji and the game version of Mr. Fuji is the movie version of him actually has a legitimate reason to clone Mewtwo. And the reason is because he wants to bring back his daughter Amber, who died through the usage of cloning. So Giovanni funded his research for cloning Pokemon and expedition to obtain Mew's DNA. And eventually he wound up cloning not just Mew, but also his daughter, as well as the 3 starter Pokemon, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander. And they were all named Bulbasaur 2, Squirtle 2, Charmander 2, as well as Amber 2. Sadly, during the experiment, Amber 2, Bulbasaur 2, Squirtle 2, and Charmander 2 unfortunately died, which resulted in a heightened emotional response from Mewtwo, mainly because it was using its psychic powers to communicate with the rest of the clones, even though they weren't conscious. And in order to calm Mewtwo, Dr. Fuji had to administer a emotion suppressant serum, which may have been the reason why it had a twisted personality in the movie. And many years after Mewtwo matured, it wound up blowing up the lab and killing all the scientists inside, even Dr. Fuji himself. And he was later found by Giovanni, who, for those of you who don't know, is the leader of Team Rocket, as well as the one who funded Dr. Fuji's expedition and research into cloning, mainly because he wanted to use Mewtwo as a weapon for world domination. And after speaking with Giovanni, he wound up working for Giovanni, helping Team Rocket out on missions revolving around catching Pokemon, as well as helping Giovanni with gym battles. However, eventually, Mewtwo found out that Giovanni was merely using him as a tool, so he wound up running away. Now in the games, there really isn't that much of a connection between Giovanni and Mewtwo. However, in the Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon Rainbow Rocket episode, when you battle Giovanni, he uses a Mewtwo on his team along with the rest of his main gym Pokemon, which could imply that Giovanni may have had a hand in the creation of Mewtwo along with Mr. Fuji. In fact, there is a theory going around that Team Rocket's goal, well, more specifically Giovanni's goal, was to catch ghost Pokemon from Lavender Town using the Silph Scope, as well as obtaining the Master Ball from the Silph Company in order to capture Mewtwo, because the Master Ball actually has a 99% catch rate. However, his plans were foiled thanks to the player character, Red. Now, over the course of the franchise, Mewtwo has made several appearances in different games, that being Heart Gold and Soul Silver, as well as X and Y. Now, in X and Y, it wound up gaining 2 Mega Evolutions, and this is mainly because of its popularity, similar to how Charizard got 2 Mega Evolutions as well. Though there is a question as to why Mewtwo actually has Mega Evolution anyway, and the main reason for this is because Mega Evolution is found naturally in the wild, thanks to the weapon that was fired by AZ in the Kalos region, while Mewtwo was made about a couple years before the events of the main story, meaning that it would be impossible for Mewtwo to actually Mega Evolve because the Mega Stones were created thanks to the energy of the Pokemon that were used to fuel the power of the weapon. However, the possible answer for this question is that the Mega Stones that are used to Mega Evolve Mewtwo are actually Mega Stones for the Pokemon known as Mew, mainly because Mew is actually naturally found in the wild. Granted, it's rare, but it's still naturally found in the wild, which means that Mew can actually Mega Evolve. And it would actually make sense because Mewtwo was created from Mew's DNA, which is why Mewtwo was actually able to Mega Evolve into 2 different forms. Now, there's also a theory that Mew and Mewtwo are also connected to another Pokemon, that Pokemon being Ditto, mainly because Ditto and Mew have an almost identical color scheme in both their normal forms and their shiny forms. Both can learn the move Transform, and Mew can actually learn every single move in existence. Not to mention, Mew holds the DNA of all living Pokemon in existence, while Ditto can transform and essentially breed with every single Pokemon except for a few legendaries. Plus, Ditto can be found in Cinnabar Island where Mewtwo was created, and it can also be found in Cerulean Cave, the deeper you go, where Mewtwo is found, which means that Ditto might be a failed clone of Mew, which would make sense because Mewtwo may not have been their first attempt at cloning Mew. Perhaps there were other attempts at cloning Mew and those attempts ended in failure, resulting in the Pokemon known as Ditto. And perhaps the scientist known as Dr. Fuji may have released all the Ditto into the wild, and as a result they wound up asexually reproducing, which may have caused its population to grow. And eventually trainers as well as Pokemon professors may have found out about the Pokemon Ditto and captured a couple of them for researching as well as breeding, considering the fact that many competitive players use Ditto for breeding Pokemon. Now, because of how iconic both Mew and Mewtwo are, I honestly hope that Game Freak explores more of Mew's backstory, and specifically even hint what possible role that Mew actually plays within the Pokemon world, because each of the legendary Pokemon has a role to play within the main Pokemon world. For example, Groudon and Kyogre created both the land and the sea, and Regigigas mainly forms the continents. So hopefully over time we'll find out what role Mew actually plays within the Pokemon world, assuming that Game Freak doesn't get lazy in the story department.